Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another one!
Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor.
Worked out by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in on this Thursday. Hope you're having a great day. Your week's going well. Dustin Schutte with me from Saturday Tradition. And if it's not, we'll get it going well. A lot going on. The NBA draft tonight. Let's talk about that. Bob Bowlesby from the Big 12 is going straight at ESPN. No Heisman back for Reggie Bush. Joey Votto is going nuts. Lots of fun stuff, man. Joey Votto from the Reds, I bring that up. He hit a home run yesterday. He's hit home runs now in 5 consecutive games. That ties the club record. And I bring this up because he joins Eugenio Suarez from 2018, Jay Bruce from 2016, Devin Marasco from 2014. I love hearing these names. Adam Dunn from 2008, Ken Griffey Jr. from 03, and Johnny Bench from 72. George Crow from 57, and Ted Kluszewski from 1954. I mentioned that because Ted Kluszewski, of course, from Indiana University, played for the Hoosiers. Played for the Hoosiers' 1945 Big Ten champion football team.
Wow. That's quite a list to join right there.
That's a pretty good one. It makes you wonder why they haven't done a lot better in the playoffs or made the playoffs.
I was going to say I don't follow Reds I don't follow much baseball at all, but have they even been in the playoffs recently?
Nope.
Yeah, so that's a problem.
That's an issue. That's okay. Something else, with all the name, image, likeness that's changed, now Reggie Bush lost his Heisman over making money on himself, basically, or for whatever reason. He wanted to get his Heisman back. The Heisman folks were like, we're fine with that. Everybody's fine with it as long as the NCAA recognizes his records, which they were deleted because of this. Where's the fairness in that now? It's kind of weird. We talk about Indiana, who got in all that trouble with Kelvin Sampson over texting and calling, which that rule was changed the very next year. But Reggie Bush and a Heisman Trophy. What are your thoughts on that? Should he get his Heisman back because he made a few bucks, which has now been made completely legal, which they've been clamoring for forever? I don't know.
I mean, to me, I don't understand. So 2 things that have never really made much sense to me in terms of what you're revoking. If the NCAA, like when the NCAA revokes wins or a national title or any sort of individual honors, like they still went out and earned that. It wasn't like Reggie Bush tested positive for some sort of performance-enhancing drug that maybe made him a better athlete. This is profit. I know it's against the rules, but why are you not? To me, you punish.
It was against the rules then. Against the rules then,
right? So first, I think his Heisman should have been revoked in the first place. He still went out. He was still a 1,000-yard rusher. He had a ton of yards in the receiving game. He was one of the flashiest players. He was on a team that won 2 straight national titles, almost won a third. I think it's a bigger pain to just not give it back to him. Like, nobody's going to look back and say Reggie Bush was the Heisman winner, but they already recognize him as a Heisman winner. He's always introduced as a Heisman Trophy winner. So just give him his trophy back. What's it doing? That's what I want to know. Is it in some locked closet somewhere that only the people of the Heisman Trust can access? What are they doing with it that they just can't return it to him? I don't understand. So I didn't think it should. It's like Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. We're at a point where it's just ridiculous. Just put him in the Hall of Fame. Give Reggie Bush his Heisman Trophy back. I don't understand why this has to be such a big deal. Again, if he would have tested positive for some sort of performance-enhancing drug, then yes, I understand. Maybe it's not a level playing field. But when you're talking about making some money, a rule that's since been wiped away, didn't change how he performed on the field, he wasn't going to probably leave USC even if he didn't get paid. So what's it matter? That's my stance on the whole thing. I can't believe we're still talking about this nearly 2 decades later, but this is the stupidity of the NCAA, and which, by the way, has caused this firestorm with name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal and everything else that's going on right now.
But that's how everything always happens with the NCAA. Nothing happens until they're forced to do it, and when they are forced to do it, they're always way behind. Glenn says if they grant Reggie Bush his Heisman, then you open the door for others. Well, I understand that, but I'm not sure which others we're talking about. But
I was just going to say, other than O.J. Simpson, who are you talking about there? I don't know. Has anybody else had it revoked that I can't remember? I mean, maybe it was before my time. I don't know.
He's probably just talking about it in other ways. But in regards to the Heisman, do you look back at Indiana? Look what the problems the basketball program had to go through because of Kelvin Sampson and phone calls and text messages, which that rule was changed the very next year because it was kind of ridiculous. But there's that. So just
but to that point, that's where I'm coming from on the sense of they punished a program and ultimately it led to Kelvin Sampson being fired. Now we can talk about whether that was a fair punishment or not.
Right.
And it probably extended a little bit further than what it needed to. It was probably a little too extreme for the situation and the penalties, but it doesn't erase what Indiana accomplished that season, and it doesn't take away from any of the individual honors. So I can understand punishing USC. That's fine, but vacating wins makes no sense. Everybody remembers how good those teams were, and taking away individual honors, they still had to go out and earn it. So I have never understood those two concepts.
That's like the 2013 national championship for Louisville that was taken away. I mean, you can't take away who won it.
Yeah.
The people that were on the team. That nothing changes. It's kind of pointless. There are other things. Yeah. Taken away, unless wins were granted because of an illegal player or something like that, it makes no sense to me. Anything to do with a coach makes no sense to me. It has nothing, because you're hurting the players. Even the Penn State thing with Joe Paterno and vacating all those wins, it doesn't mean you to support what that crazy other assistant coach did. I don't even want to say his name. No. But that has nothing to do with what happened on the field between these 85 guys that were playing every time. It has nothing to do with all of that, the history that they were a part of. So you just wipe that out because a coach did something off that had nothing to do with the games or a player. Yeah, they've never made sense, and they're not going to start making sense.
Well, it comes to the point where I don't know what a way to phrase this would be, but it's almost to the point. It's like separating the art from the artist in a sense, because what does I've asked this question. I don't understand what
we're getting John Lennon-esque.
Yeah, there we go. I don't know what does vacating those wins, like Joe Paterno is going to go down as one of the most controversial coaches, not just in college football history, but probably in sports history. I mean, that's going to be one of the things we talk about now. It used to be what's going to be the feature of his book. Now it's like what's going to be on his Wikipedia page. And that's right up there. But whether he would have won 10 games or whether he won or the 409 that he won, that has no relevance into what actually happened at Penn State. So you're correct. You're punishing those players and those other staff members who accomplish these things. It doesn't lessen the severity of the situation by vacating wins. It had nothing to do with on the field situations. So I think that those wins were reinstated. I don't remember off the top of my head. I've kind of pushed that out of my mind, but that it just the NCAA makes ridiculous decisions, and they think by taking away wins that's going to help solve some of the issues. But generally, that's not the case. All the time, it's not the case.
We'll get on into that. Lots going on. The Olympics, of course, going on. Annie Lazar and Lily King will be swimming again in the 200-meter women's breaststroke final, as they both made it through prelims and the semis to get to that point. I don't know when that swim will be next. I'll have to look that up. But the swimming is still going on. I saw a mention here of I'm sure you meant Dusty Hill, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes. There you go.
Yep.
Was the 275 pounds of twisted steel sex appeal. He was a wrestler.
Yeah.
But yeah, there we go. Dusty Hill passed away from ZZ Top. So Glenn asked other problems. You're going to reward Bush for his Heisman for a wrongdoing. The other players are going to say, but see that now when you get to talking wrongdoing, now you get into, well, his family got help. He helped his family. Is that wrong? Is that really wrong?
Well, I don't. First of all, I don't think so. But second of all, I fail to see how reinstating some of this stuff affects anybody else. An example is like the tattoo gate at Ohio State, right? Like the NCAA came out and said, we're not going to reconsider that either. We're not going to reconsider a prior judgment. But who does it affect to reinstate the 12 wins? Does anybody really have a problem with it?
The players.
Right. Those are the people who want it back. So who else does it negatively affect? Like, I don't know who all they played that season, but let's just say they played Indiana and they played Purdue. Well, Purdue and Indiana aren't chalking those up as wins now all of a sudden. They're not adding it to their career. So it's not affecting – those coaches aren't even there anymore. It literally affects nothing. So that's what I'm saying. I don't understand how this negatively affects anybody else to just say, you know what, we're going to go back and we'll give you your stats back. We'll give you everybody recognizes it anyway. You're not going to go back and eliminate Terrell Pryor's final or one of his best seasons at Ohio State because those wins were vacated because his records and statistics were vacated. You're still going to put down the number of yardage when you're talking about him, how much he compiled during his time at Ohio State. So it serves no purpose in my opinion.
I agree, but that's probably the least of the NCAA's concerns right now, as they've got plenty of stuff to deal with all the here and the now. So going backwards is the least of their concerns, to be honest with you. But the only reason I brought that up is because the Heisman people have said, hey, we're fine with it, him having his Heisman, as long as the NCAA recognizes his statistics. And they've deleted all his statistics, and that's the problem. If they would just reinstate his statistics, then he gets his Heisman back. What happens if the NCAA goes away?
Great question. That's a great question.
Who is the NCAA, and why are they given this right to determine this? Because they're on kind of thin ice to me as it is, as an entity.
Right. And it seems like it's just a bigger hassle to not reinstate it. If you just reinstate those statistics, all this goes away. You never have to talk about it again.
Shimatory66 hit us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline and says, now that we are doing away with amateurism, I think there should be a draft for players among these super conference schools. All other pros are subject to a draft rather than picking where they play. Kind of an ironic, a different take on things. Never thought about it that way, but it's kind of, it's kind of like that now. In a way, you get to go after the guys you want. You get to offer the guys you want. Whether you get them or not is up to you. But yeah, that's where pretty sure we're not going there. Great sideline suggestion, but.
Well, and if they didn't,
we got enough to deal with the portal.
And if they did, I was just going to say, if they don't like where they're going, then they can just enter the transfer portal and leave right away and go. So that pretty much puts a kibosh on that.
The NBA draft is tonight, and as you can see, Dustin is ready. He has got his war room business going on for the Pacers and their number 13 pick. Anything you want to let out of the bag? Hey,
I'm just
hoping. Should have when it broke. The break.
I'm just excited. Rick Carlisle coming back. I think they've got a great core. We've talked with Chris Denari about it. I like what they have in place. I'm looking forward. I don't know whether they're going to draft somebody. I personally hope they go with Franz Wagner out of Michigan if he's available. Some say he's going to be a top 10 pick, so he may not be there. They may trade the pick for an experienced guy, for a leader. Who knows what's going to happen tonight? But this is the most optimistic about a draft I think I've been, because Rick Carlisle's back and he's going to be part of the decision-making process.
We've got plenty more to get to. 2021 Olympic pole vaulter Sam Kendricks out after testing positive for was one of the favorites, tested positive for COVID-19. So it's real over there, man. We got plenty coming up today on the program. Chris Denari and Matt Taylor joins us as well as we prepare for the NBA draft. Look forward to talking to Chris. And Matt is out at Coach Camp, so we got that going on. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking... Oh, yes, I have to talk about that one thing later that I sent you.
Oh, yeah.
That's not a good time. That's not great timing.
No, that does not seem like great timing.
See, if you were here, you could do double duties.
I can't do double duties.
Oh, you couldn't do double duties?
Mm-mm.
Matt's here.
Hello, Matt. How are you, sir?
Hey, guys. What's up?
How are things out at Westfield?
Oh, there is a lot of action up here already. A lot of people. This is day 2, so there's a big crowd yesterday. There's a day. So,
what time does practice run?
Most days, Monday through Friday, most practices start around 9:45 until about 11:30.
I'm gonna come up and do a show from up. I'm gonna maybe plan to do next Thursday up there.
Yeah, just get with the PR staff up here and see if they can make that happen.
Yeah, it would be easy on my side. Who would I talk to?
Matt Conti with the Colts. He's head of PR.
CONTI?
Yep, CONTI.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
How's everything else going? Sounds like it's fun. I saw some reports yesterday. A lot of peeps out there.
Oh yeah, it's good. I mean, it's on. I mean, once it starts, it's on. So, there's no slowing down now. It took me about an hour and 20 minutes to get up here yesterday because of traffic. That's the only bad thing on my end.
You live on the south end?
Yeah, I live on the south side, just north of Greenwood. So, if there's 465 trouble, I'm pretty much hosed.
Yeah, it'd be the same for me. I guess I'd be longer coming from B-Town.
It would take you probably about 2 hours to get up here.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring us back in.
With friends or on the golf course, Sam's Restaurants has multiple locations and something for everyone. Sam's Restaurant in Fishers has homemade coffee cakes and much more. Sam's Place in Broad Ripple has wings, tender steaks, and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Sam's Family of Restaurants. Fresh, local, family. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this Thursday. Join now directly from Westfield, Colts training camp, Matt Taylor. How are you, Matt?
I'm good, guys. What's going on? Yep, it's day 2 of camp, so it's here, and we got football. Life is good. We're going, and we're not slowing down.
Yep, Bob Kravitz was on with us yesterday, and we were talking about the opening day of camp. He was headed out there, and then I knew that today you're out there, so I saw the reports. The fans are out and about. It looked fun, festive. It's just everything that people have missed.
No, it's great to be back out here at Westfield because last year, obviously because of COVID, every team had to do their training camp at their team facility, and it's almost like it just happened in a vacuum. If you weren't there, you wouldn't know what's going on, and there's not a lot of there's a different vibe to it. And so to have fans back up here, just a sprawling campus of great facilities at Graham Park, Colt City's back. That's sort of like the interactive fan zone for kids to run around on the fields and to catch passes and time themselves in the 40-yard dash, interact with the mascot. There's bands up here. Colts in Motion is up here. So there's tons to do for everybody outside of just, the hardcore fan to sit and watch practice for an hour and a half or 2 hours. But I mean, it just feels like football again. That's the best part. There's just a different vibe and a different energy with people up here and fans in the stands kind of oohing and ahhing when there's a great play made during practice.
Yeah, and it's very unusual because back in the day, it wasn't very long ago, this was not allowed. I mean, this is a full turn from what it used to be, sports. Now you're opening things up to people who can come in and see the inner workings of this. It's just an opportunity that did not used to be here.
No, I mean, the Colts are one of 5 teams. The Colts have, for a long time, been one of the teams that has prioritized sort of being out and getting away from the team facility in years past. I mean, they've gone to Anderson, they've gone to Rose-Hulman and Terre Haute. Now they're here at Graham Park. And so, they're not in dorms or in a college setting, but they're still away, and guys can still just focus on football for, 3 or 4 weeks prior to the start of the season, kind of get away from life's troubles, all the different stresses that these guys have, just focus on the playbook, focus on their bodies, getting right mentally and physically before the start of the season, and build a brotherhood and build camaraderie. And it just doesn't happen that way anymore. And not that you can't do some of that, if you're another team working out at your team facility, but the Colts are one of only 5 teams in the NFL that prioritizes allowing fans to be at practice and really giving people an experience that can see the team, can feel the team, if for whatever reason they can't go to a game at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Matt, obviously, you're it's just day 2, but I'm curious from your job perspective, when you go out to Westfield, what are you looking at in particular? What are some things that you're jotting down? What are things you're looking for as the season approaches?
Well, for me, I mean, the big one, I mean, for the most part during the summer, and I've been studying the roster, so I've got the names, I've got the numbers, I've got where you went to school, things like that. But for some of the new guys, so there's about 30 new players on this roster, it's seeing how they move, seeing how they're used, kind of identifying their body types, so to speak, to help me with my job. But just, the big storylines of this team, just finding out real early, who's going to emerge as a pass rusher. We talked about that a lot this offseason. Who's going to be that third cornerback? How is Jacob Eason looking at backup quarterback? So some of the big storylines we talked about ad nauseum for 2.5 months kind of played out yesterday for the first time. And then you got the backdrop, obviously, of COVID-19 with Frank Reich testing positive, even though he's asymptomatic. So he's not out here this first week. So you're kind of adjusting as far as that goes. And then you have 3 other players that are on the COVID-19 list. And, they're not guys just to kind of like gloss over and sneeze at. I mean, Al-Qadim Muhammad, who is in the mix to be one of those defensive ends and kind of take on a bigger role. He was on that list. So is TJ Carey and Xavier Rhodes. So you got a starter and then another guy that plays a lot in nickel packages that's not out there on defense. So get those guys back, as soon as possible to kind of get in the fold and get right and get ready to go for the start of the preseason and start of the regular season.
Yeah, because getting a quarterback in tune with the offense is probably the hardest thing to do, and having a new quarterback with this offense is something that they have to do. Although new to the team, not new to Frank Reich, but still they've got to get this going yesterday. A little bit of a slow start, it looked like, for him, but I think a lot of excitement going on in hearing him talk. So there's no way you put any stock into a first day.
No, I mean, he said he was a little uneven. He was, in his words, he was a little amped up. And so you can obviously understand that because this is everything's new for him. New scene for training camp, new teammates, new playbook. And, the head coach or one of his biggest advocates in bringing him over in the trade wasn't out here. So, yeah, he's kind of just human nature, just fired up and just excited to kind of write the first chapter of his second chapter, if you will, of his NFL career with the Colts, get off to a good start. So I'll be eager to see what he looks like today. I anticipate he'll be a little bit more, steady and in control. But it's not like he was just awful yesterday either. I mean, it's just first day, day one jitters, kind of like that first day of school that we can all kind of relate to. So he'll calm down. He'll be in a good spot, but let's get guys involved, sort of just like it was last year where, at least 7 different guys caught a pass in every game. I think this offense for the Colts this year is going to be just as inclusive with a lot of guys making plays every single game. And then the star of the game, if you will, is going to be a different guy each and every Sunday.
Last year, obviously, we had fans, depending on where you were, there were limited capacity or some stadiums did not allow any fans a season ago, but you talked about a little bit more of a sense of normalcy here, with fall training camp and everything. Are the players feeding off the energy of the fans and maybe even a little vice versa right now? Just getting back to that normal?
No, that's a great point. And absolutely. I mean, we've talked to a lot of guys so far this week, and that's one of the things we make a point to ask is what does this do for you? What kind of energy does this give you? He's like, we practice already at a really high level already. And it's very, very intense, but just out here with the fans, it just gives us more excitement. It just adds more juice to what we're doing and how we're trying to get better. So absolutely, the fans just add an element to practice and to training camp. I mean, this is why you do these things. I mean, the players play for the fans. They are entertainment for the masses. And so it's really all about the fans. Give them an experience, give them something to see prior to the season, and give them a reason to hope, give them a reason to cheer and to buy in so that every Sunday, folks around here can make it an appointment viewing to watch the Colts.
Coming up next for you out there, I know that the fans are out there, and it's free. You have to get a ticket. You can just go to Colts.com/tickets.
Colts.com/camp. So you're exactly right. It is free, but you have to have a ticket to get in. It's all digitally, if you will. So most people just, download the app on their phone, show the phone, get scanned, walk right in. It's as easy as that.
Well, Matt, I can't thank you. I know you got to get back to camp. It's busy, but I look forward to hopefully maybe we can do the show from up there next Thursday. That would be kind of cool.
Yep. Let me know. That come one, come all. I mean, it's the Grand Park is absolutely beautiful. It's on the north side of Indianapolis. Well, I should say it's a suburb of Indianapolis, but it's a breeze to get in here with, Keystone Avenue and 31 being redone in the last couple of years. So, I mean, it is easy in, easy out. You can park. There's plenty of ample parking. There's food up here. So, bring the kids before school starts. Again, have an experience, enjoy Colts football, and obviously, watch the weather too, bring the sunscreen and stay hydrated, but it is a whole lot of fun up here. There's something for everybody to do.
How long is camp open to the public?
There's 19 practices. So today is day 2. So 2 out of 19. And I believe the last practice is August 25th. And most of the practices Monday through Friday typically start around 9:45, 10, run until about 11:30, 11:45-ish. The weekend dates are a little bit different. Most of those on Saturdays and Sundays are going to be in the afternoon, ranging from around 1 to 2:30. And then the big draw of camp is going to be those joint practices with the Carolina Panthers before that first preseason game. Those dates are August 12th and 13th. And I believe that's a Thursday. No, it's a Wednesday and Thursday get together. And I believe those start around 2:00 in the afternoon. But check the website. I don't have it up in front of me, but check the website, Colts.com/camp for all the info and the full schedule.
Absolutely. Matt Taylor joining us live from Westfield from the Indianapolis Colts training camp. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you soon.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much. There he is, the voice of the Colts, Matt Taylor, joining us live from camp up there. Like I said, we have to do the show from up there live. It's just an awesome experience. One of only 5 teams that does that. That's pretty cool because that's access that pro teams just don't give out.
Right. And it's really beneficial. You know, I'm sure it's great for the players to be able to do this in front of fans and have those interactions. It's probably not quite what it typically has been in the past because of the pandemic and things like that, but it's getting closer back to normal. But this is really something for the fans. You know, Matt said it best. This is, if you can't afford or you don't have the time to be able to get out to a Colts game, you know, those tickets, they go fast. And so having the opportunity to watch professional athletes at their craft, you know, before the season starts, being able to interact with them on some level, being able to see that, it's a great opportunity. I remember as a youngster, as part of football camp, we would go up there every year or down there. I think it was in Terre Haute at the time. And we would go down there and watch them every year. And it was a really neat and fun experience. And then, you know, I think Matt even said that maybe no autographs, but, you know, get a couple autographs. So it's
no
so
autographs.
much fun. No autographs this year, but in future years you'll be able to do it. It's so much fun. I would recommend doing it to anyone because it's, you know, middle of summer. It's live football, and we haven't been able to see live sports in so long, live football anyway. So it's really a treat to go out there and do that.
We've got plenty more to get to. Let's see who else we've got. Chris Denari yet today as the NBA draft is tooling. The Olympics are going on, and we've talked so much about Simone Biles and dropping out and how much that was going to hurt Team USA. Guess what? Her replacement, Suni Lee, I believe, won the gold medal in the all-around, individual all-around as her replacement, if I'm reading that correctly. So yeah, a wide open meet due to Simone Biles' withdrawal resulted in USA Gymnastics teammate Suni Lee seizing an Olympic gold medal in Tokyo to continue the Americans' recent domination of the individual all-around competition. That streak is now 5 straight, I think, but unbelievably. We'll talk about that a little bit more too, but how about that? Coming off the sideline to win gold. Hello. Man, that's a strong program.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And plenty more. I want to revisit the Reggie Bush stuff, not him particular, but there's so much out there because the NCAA has kept people down. It wasn't fair then. So do you go back and right some of these wrongs? But if you do, does that open the Pandora's box, like Glenn said earlier, to some others? But yeah, so talk about the draft when we come back. Pete says, yeah, makes sense, but he gets hung up on the dollars. Next year, the Bucks, number 4 spending, number 23, number 2, the Pacers spent that amount. No matter the name, they figure they are a big challenger. Let's see who they get, but we got plenty more to talk about. We'll be back with it right after this here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for a relaxing night.
How about that? The Olympic thing. That's blowing my mind, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that. I haven't watched much of the Olympics, to be honest with you.
She's also, I'm just reading, she's also among HMONG.
What?
Is among HMONG. It's an ethnic group from like Southeast Asia.
Okay.
I know there's a lot in Minnesota, but she's the first Hmong gymnast for America.
Is she from Minnesota herself?
You know what? It's a good question. I've not seen where she's from yet.
We do not have the answer yet.
But just Google, where is Suni Lee from?
South St. Paul, Minnesota.
Bingo! That's amazing. The girl that lost because she stepped out of bounds twice.
Are you serious?
That's gotta hurt.
It's always crazy to me how they can time that so perfectly and land that like right in the corner.
It's part of the precision, man.
I know.
That's 5 straight.
Time to bring us back in.
For a new or used vehicle, Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington's got you covered. They're Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. For deals like this, how about a new 2020 Honda Civic LX front-wheel drive lease for just $180 a month? Or a new 2021 Honda Accord LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio's Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this Thursday. Class of 23 prospects and Grand Park Premier AAU teammates Joey Hart and Sam Orme have scheduled their official Indiana visits. You can read that at thehoosier.com, more about that and those guys as they looked at by Mike Woodson and staff. Basketball continues quietly as we await the trip to the Bahamas that comes up in 2 weeks, which will be quiet. The Hoosier will be there for thehoosier.com. Indiana Rivals will be there for complete coverage for you. Make sure you go there for that because there was no television, no radio.
That's so crazy to me.
This is, yeah, it is. I think that it's an opportunity for Mike Woodson and staff to see their team in a way. It's like the secret scrimmages, basically. It's like letting people into the secret scrimmages.
Right.
But you're not just letting anybody in, because if you're going on this trip, you have some means. It's not a cheap trip. Not a cheap trip.
Nope. Well, I mean, and it makes sense. You're kind of providing a once in a lifetime experience. I mean, I know it doesn't really, it's not indicative of what's going to happen this season. The results don't really matter. These players are going over there for the opportunity to get better and kind of gel as a team and learn under their new staff with Mike Woodson and Dane Fife and some of those guys. But it is a unique once in a lifetime opportunity that if you're able to go, you can go and do something that not a lot of people are able to do and get a firsthand look at what the 21-22 Hoosiers look like. And I'm interested from the people who go to kind of hear about what we see out of Indiana.
Yeah, looking forward to that. There's so much to wait and see how it's all going to play out. But I think that they'll have a lot better understanding by the time they get there. But yeah, it would be nice to see it. Everyone wants to see these players, how they're meshing, how they're playing. But unless you're going to Atlantis, you're not going to get to see that. Let's see. What was Steve talking about here? A super team is when 3 or more all-stars team up together. The Bucks have one superstar and play in a small market. Oh, talking about super teams. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't consider the Milwaukee Bucks any close to a super team.
No, I wouldn't.
Actually, close to see them win.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider. And you look back too at the teams that were in the conference finals. I mean, I guess you could call the Los Angeles Clippers a super team. I guess the Suns weren't, and the Atlanta Hawks definitely weren't. So that was kind of the big takeaway from this season is you don't have to have a super team to win an NBA championship. You just have to have depth and guys that know their role. And if you have the right coach in place, we saw Nate McMillan take over a bad Hawks team, and they were able to make the Eastern Conference Finals. Los Angeles probably would have been in a better situation if Kawhi Leonard was healthy. But still, they didn't have the kind of that's what hurts you. If you one of those star players is not at 100% and you don't have that depth, you're really hurting. And that's what we saw from Milwaukee, and that's what we saw from Phoenix. And so I think a lot of people who were turned off from the NBA because of the Heat and the Big Three, and then the Golden State Warriors and Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson, and some of those other guys. I think that this provided a rejuvenation, a bit of a new life for the NBA to say, you know what? Yeah, we're going to have some super teams. We're going to have the Brooklyns, the Los Angeles Clippers, and some of these other teams. But we just saw two teams that I would not define as super teams in the NBA Finals. And I think that that's a good thing for the league.
I think it's a great thing to see those guys get beat. It's like the argument for class basketball in Indiana. It's like a 2A school beating a 3A school. It could still happen. Like last season, I think that you could have taken the 2A and up and put them in a bowl, and it would have been a hell of a tournament. Speaking of, I mentioned this earlier, the Big 12's Bob Bowlesby, the commissioner of the Big 12, came out hard and strong against ESPN last night, one of their TV partner. He's claiming ESPN is not only helping, which of course they are, Texas and Oklahoma get to the and suggesting and promoting that they get to the SEC. Now that they are helping and promoting other Big 12 members to go to leave and basically disband the conference. It would apparently save ESPN hundreds of millions of dollars because it would allow these people out of these contracts. It would allow them out of a contract. And now they're involving themselves into something that, it's probably the courts are going to be getting involved in this.
Yeah, and the interesting thing to me is, and I tweeted this out last night, I don't know who would be able to enforce this, if anybody. But to me, it's always been a conflict of interest for ESPN to own the SEC network, to own the ACC network, to have coverage of the college football playoff games and the rankings. That to me, there's some muddied waters to me. And like I said, I don't know how you would be able to enforce that because there's no college football or college athletics SAR. The NCAA has no power over college football, and that's what drives all this money. So it's not surprising to me, but we're coming off of a fiscal year in which we saw sports stop. I mean, ESPN had very little, if any, content for months and months and months. So I'm sure that they took a financial hit. So if they're able to save hundreds of millions of dollars by seeing the Big 12 disband and have that contract basically be wadded up and thrown into the trash, I'm sure that there's some phone calls, backdoor phone calls, and backdoor meetings taking place if they didn't beforehand. So it's not surprising to me. It's all driven by money. It's all driven by finances. I'm just fascinated to see what kind of fight the Big 12 can put up, and if they just don't want to hassle with it. I mean, the sad part is if you think about all the people, Jim, we were just at Big Ten Media Days. Think of all the people that you don't think about behind the scenes that work at the Big Ten, within the Big Ten Conference. You're talking about all those people in the Big 12 losing their jobs. And so that's what kind of gets lost in all this. We make fun of Texas and Oklahoma for, destroying the Big 12 and Texas destroying all these conferences. But you're talking about a lot of people that work in that conference, work hard in that conference. This isn't just about the teams. This just isn't about the athletic departments. There are actual people that work in that conference that are at risk of losing their jobs because of some of these backdoor wheeling and dealing that's suspected of going on, or at least that Bob Bowlesby is alleging is happening right now.
Well, all right, let's get back to what he said. Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesby accused ESPN of encouraging other conferences to pick apart the league so Texas and Oklahoma can move to the SEC more quickly and without paying that $80 million that it would cost each of them, which that $160 million would go a long way in keeping the Big 12 afloat, obviously. Bob Bowlesby says, quote, I have absolute certainty that they, ESPN, have been involved in manipulating other conferences to go after our members. Big 12 Commissioner Bowlesby told the Associated Press on Wednesday after sending a cease and desist letter to the network. He's actually talking about the AAC, it's not the Big Ten, or it's not any other big conference. It's the AAC, a middling conference who sees this as an opportunity to raise their level, I guess, because they've been looked at as they're less than a Power 5 conference. And This is an opportunity to grab some Power 5 teams and try to become a piece of that, to climb up. All conferences have not always been great. Some have risen to get up there. And
it would basically be the new Big East.
Yeah, but with the Midwest. It's crazy.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean,
but the teams, and what's in the Big Ten? Are they going to stand pat? What are they doing this? I mean, there's no one from the Big 12 that is eye attractive to me for the Big Ten. There's no one. There's no one left that is like, oh wow, it would be cool to get them. No. The best what was Iowa State is nice, but they're just nice. It's not, you're not gaining any television market. You're gaining no historical programs. You're not getting anything.
I mean, you already the Big Ten kind of already owns that state, because I would assume it's 70-30 probably in that state, Iowa to Iowa State. I mean, that's just typically how that kind of thing works. What I would do if I was the Big Ten is I would urge USC and UCLA. I would work on some sort of deal there, because now you're expanding, going coast to coast. You have California, you have New York markets. And while those aren't big college markets, they are still big television markets, and you get that recruiting base. The other thing I would do is think about if you had UCLA. You could dominate week 0. You could have a season opening game in the Rose Bowl. You could rotate the conference championship game between Indianapolis and the Rose Bowl, because let's face it, with the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams in all likelihood, the Rose Bowl is not going to carry the same weight as it once did. The granddaddy of them all is still going to be there, but it doesn't carry as much weight when it's a quarterfinal game or a semifinal game. When it's the national championship game, yeah, sure, it's going to be awesome. But when it's serving the purpose of being in those other rounds, it's not quite as prestigious. So why not play that game for the Big Ten title? You would have access to that. So you have a chance for recruiting, for television ratings. I mean, you're telling me that you're going to get the same sort of backdrop that you get in the Rose Bowl on January 1st every year. You're just going to move it up 4 months. So I think you have an opportunity to get some big name programs. I know that they haven't been great recently, but some big name programs. It helps your recruiting. It helps your television markets. Why wouldn't you want your conference? Region has nothing to do with it anymore, as you can tell. West Virginia is in the Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma, they're a little bit more. Them being in the SEC is a little bit more of a regional thing, but it doesn't matter anymore. The only thing that would suck is you're probably going to have to watch an 11 o'clock Indiana USC tip-off every once in a while, but you'll learn to live with it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I get what you're saying as far as money, but I just don't think that Big Ten people are going to grasp onto that. Definitely those late tips, that's not going to happen. I just don't see the Big Ten going there. I don't know, but what do I know? I don't know. They don't know what they're going to do. So how the hell do I know what they're going to do?
Kevin Warren was so thrown off.
And that is really, again, scary and disappointing at the same time, because it's like the second season in a row of his tenure is like, what? Hey, huh? What? Oh, I'm supposed to be prepared. It's like, oh, the lights are on. We're here. It's like he seems shocked. Every time something happens, he's shocked.
He was too busy patting himself on the back.
For what?
In that 30-minute monologue. Well, he went on he had a speech prepared for all the things the Big Ten accomplished. And don't get me wrong, there were some good things that the conference accomplished, but he was so unwilling to talk about his shortcomings. And then to be either one, he knew all about what was happening and about to happen, and he just didn't want to say anything, or he was totally clueless as to what was happening with Texas and Oklahoma and was completely caught off guard. So it was one of those two things, and I don't know which it was.
I'm going to go with the latter, because the one thing about Jim Delaney, you could tell he was always in charge. He knew what was going on. But you know why? Because he was the leader of it, because the Big Ten was on the leading edge of this stuff, always under his charge. And it has been an exact reversal of fortunes here. It's obvious when you hire Barry Alvarez to basically be the commissioner of the Big Ten.
Yep.
So you can tell me what to say and what to do. That's basically what has happened here. Nobody is saying that but me, but that's the truth. Hell, I was calling him Commissioner Alvarez last year.
Well,
and he didn't even work for the conference. But you could tell he was the guy making the decisions. He was the guy going to. Why the hell is Kevin Warren the commissioner again? This is not a one-time screw up here. You can tell he has no idea what he's doing and continues to have no idea. This just seems like a lifetime achievement award to sit in that chair, because he does not seem to be doing anything. The Big Ten is, again, Johnny come lately.
Well, I mean, clearly he's got the support of at least a majority. I don't know how it's voted on. I don't know how you make the determination, but clearly he's got the support of a majority, if not most of the presidents in the Big Ten. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that, the way he was willing to work. I mean, let's face it, the Big Ten, we give Kevin Warren a lot of grief over what happened last year, and he deserves a good portion of it. But we also don't talk enough about the college presidents who made this decision to cancel the season, basically to get out ahead of the Pac-12 and not talk with their athletic directors, not talk with the head football coaches, not talk with their players. Those people who made that decision, we don't talk about them enough. So I think, I don't want to call it manipulation, but clearly he is more interested in what they have to say than working with the athletic directors and the football coaches. And that's why, as you said, he hired Barry Alvarez, because he's going to be that liaison. And there's clearly some sort of strain between, because you don't hire Barry Alvarez to be the liaison for your money driver. Jim Delaney would have, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth, because I don't know if there was actually this position ever in the Big Ten, so I can't speak to that. But I don't remember Jim Delaney ever bringing anybody in to be the liaison between he and the football coaches. He seemed to have a pretty strong relationship between himself and the thing that brought in all the money to the Big Ten.
That's because Jim Delaney knew what he was doing. Do you know who Kevin Warren is sounding more and more like? Mark Emmert. He is just another Mark Emmert who, again, is going by the behest of these school presidents who are clueless when it comes to the athletics and the running of the athletics department. Why, I keep asking, are the ADs not the guys that are running this? They're the CEOs of that division, or the CFO, whatever you want to. They're the ones, they're the presidents of that part of the company. Right. You know, if you want to do divisions of a company and you have a president of this division, man, I sure think that's the guy that you're going to go to on all things regarding that division. And that's not what happens here. And it's idiotic, but that's why it's always screwed up. And why is it these people can't just use common sense? Because that would, and the presidents, they're not going to get rid of Warren, because they're the ones that brought him in. A,
Right.
and B, that causes a look of destabilization within the conference. That would give other conferences reason to quickly do some things, probably, because it would show weakness. But there is a weakness. If you don't know it's there, it's because you're not paying attention to it. But there is weakness in the Big Ten right now, and the SEC knows it. That's part of the reason why they were able to get Texas and Oklahoma without anything being known for the last 6 months. This just didn't start last week. It's been going on for a while.
Well, and somebody summed this up best, and I'm going to forget the quote, and I don't know who got it, but it was former Northwestern athletic, or it was about former Northwestern athletic director Jim Phillips, who's now the ACC commissioner. Somebody said, and I do apologize because I can't give credit and I don't remember who said it, but they said basically the Big Ten had their opportunity to get one of the up and coming, personalities, somebody to lead their conference, and they swung and missed. So far, what we've seen in 2 years, and Kevin Warren standing up at that podium at Big Ten Media Days and saying he didn't regret a single thing. I mean, I understand standing by your decision, but to say you have no regrets after the disarray and the confusion last season, that's not a good look for the league.
We got to take a quick break. Tim says that the Big Ten will not add teams. Already told Kansas no. I don't believe that at all. But we'll talk about it more when we come back. And RBO Sprint says the ACC schools are more attractive than the Big 12 leftovers. Probably some truth there. Plenty more to get to. Chris Denari is going to join us as well later. We got to talk about the NBA draft. But we'll be back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans.
Chris just called me and said he'll be joining momentarily. He's not going to be late now.
Oh, he is the man.
He is the man.
Remind me, Psalms is really, really aggravating me.
Have they still not given you them cards?
No, they have not.
I don't know when anything is live or recorded with the Olympics. I just know I turn it on, and then it's on when I go to bed and on when I wake up. I have no idea what happened.
Night, I didn't know. I'm like, is this happened yet? Is this not happened yet? I was watching, because I was watching the women's 3-on-3, and I'm like, wait a minute. They already won this yesterday, didn't they?
Yeah. It's on like 4 different channels. I have no idea. I have not paid. It's been on in the background, but I've been writing so much that I have no idea what's happened.
Is Japan like worst case scenario in terms of like time zone difference for the Olympics or any sort of international competition? Are they like 12 hours difference for the U.S.?
You see. Well, what's Hawaii? 8 hours?
I think.
I don't know.
I think the worst would. Well, I don't remember now. Actually,
I'll tell you what.
I thought Australia.
I think it's more than 12. Hello, Chris Denari.
Hey there, guys. How are you?
Great, brother. How you doing?
I just got done getting my butt kicked in a CrossFit workout.
The man who stays alive.
I
am so out of shape. If I did something of exercise, I would probably die. And that's horrible to say that. It's like, wow. I look at those guys walking on the golf course, and I'm like, what an idiot. Oh, man. You have to get you have a chance. You can go up to Colts camp.
Yeah, I could. I mean, I don't know if I will. I could. It's
I'm
too.
sure you
It's
have
too.
plenty of other things to do.
It's too hot right now. I can't even imagine being out there. No, we've got a big draft party tonight.
I bet.
That I've got MC. So.
Oh wow.
But yeah, I'm only 10 minutes or so away. 15 minutes from Grand Park. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit better than the 2 hours it is for me.
Yeah, no question.
All right, time to come back in.
Food. Psalms Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Psalms Clubhouse. Psalms Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Sam's Family of Restaurants. Fresh, local, family. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday. Dustin Schutte with me as always from Saturday Tradition, and joined by the great Chris Denari from the Pacers as always. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm sitting in the parking lot of my favorite Starbucks. I just got done working out. Usually I don't work out on Thursday, but needed to make an adjustment this week, and so I'm trying to recover. And after we get done, I'll go. Some people will say, should I get an iced coffee or a hot coffee, especially after you work out? But I need a hot coffee. I need that jolt of caffeine, and so I'll do that here shortly.
Yeah, I've still not adjusted to iced coffee. I'm like, if I need a cold caffeine, I'll just go drink a Mountain Dew. But if I'm getting coffee, I need it hot. I'm a hot coffee guy.
I do love iced coffee. I mean, there's no question. But for whatever reason in the morning, I need that first cup of coffee, right? Just to get going and that kind of stuff. And I always tell the people here, I'll see you one or two times. It's only about 5 minutes from my house. So I usually am in here maybe 2 or 3 times a day. But the first one, I've got to have a hot coffee to get the day going.
Well, as always, you can see Dustin he's got the war room ready for the draft tonight. As he's ready, as that is going to take place. And you mentioned that you've got a draft party to MC, everything going on tonight. We'll find out. A lot of mock drafts. Jalen Johnson, Franz Wagner. I know that's who Dustin would like to see, but we'll find out, because there's a lot of wheelings and dealings, mentions of a potential trade earlier. So all kinds of things go on, and it doesn't change right up to the time that right. ticket is punched.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many players that, I was fortunate enough a week ago to watch one of the draft workouts. Corey Kispert was there from Gonzaga, Duarte from Oregon. I think Cam Thomas from LSU was there. It was a really good workout. Zaire Williams from Stanford. So there are a lot of different ways you can go if you stay at 13. There are a number of teams that are trying to get into the lottery, get one of those top 13, 14 picks. I think the Knicks have picks number 19 and 21, and, they like some specific players. I think we all know when we follow the mock drafts, and I've done a lot more research recently than I have in the past. The top 6 or 7 pretty much seem like that's who's going to go. But from 8 to 20, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. And so, teams have to figure out who do they like, who do they think is the best fit. If you're the Pacers, there are some guys who are freshmen who are intriguing. And then you have some guys, Davion Mitchell out of Baylor, Kispert, guys, Duarte's 24 years old, guys that have a little bit more experience and bring a little bit more of a resume, and maybe they can help right away. So, there are just so many options that you can take, and we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out starting at 8 o'clock tonight.
It's so easy, to just say the Pacers want to grab the player that's best available. I mean, that's what everybody's trying to do in the NBA draft, but you've seen this team up close and personal, obviously. What, in your opinion, is an area they need to address with the draft, assuming they keep that 13th pick?
Well, I think one of the areas that, and we talked about it all last year, is you got to be more athletic, right? They probably don't have enough athletic wings. Somebody that they drafted in the second round last year was Cassius Stanley, who is probably one of their best athletes, but maybe a little bit raw as a basketball player. Edmund Sumner really came on as the year went on, and he was definitely one of the Pacers' best athletes. But when you look out on the wing, Jeremy Lamb's not a great athlete. Malcolm Brogdon's not a super athlete. I think they're good basketball players, but they're not very athletic. So do you try to go get somebody, who's more of an athlete, still is very skilled as a basketball player, but especially from the defensive end, are they athletic enough to guard some of the really good wings who are in the NBA?
The picks for tonight, the top three seem kind of solid with Cade Cunningham penciled in at number 1, Jalen Green number 2, Evan Mobley for the most part, everyone, and Suggs at 4. Those, and then at the number 5 spot, it starts to loosen up. Scotty Barnes, Jonathan Kuminga, Book Knight, Davion Mitchell, some names that kind of are in a group together, and that's when it starts to loosen up, and that's when you see potential trades, and you don't know how things are going to go from there.
Yeah, I mean, a guy that you also didn't mention that I think, Dustin, if I'm not mistaken, he's sort of moved up in the draft is Moses Moody out of Arkansas. And
yeah, he's listed like 8.
I would say a month or so ago, he was probably outside the lottery. He was probably 15 to 20. And I think through his workouts, he's really moved up. And, he played for a guy who had coached in the G League and in the NBA, and Eric Musselman. So a lot of people think his skill set, he's ready to come into the league and help a team. So it'll be interesting to see where a guy like Moses Moody falls, because I would have to believe if he would be available at 13, the Pacers would snap him up in a heartbeat.
And my question is when you talk about things changing, it doesn't matter whether it's the NFL, NBA, MLB draft, things are always kind of changing. And one of the things we've talked about, Chris, on this show multiple times is we really like the makeup of this team. We really like the pieces that they have. It's just a matter of them coming together. And we've talked about them needing a leader, maybe a veteran leader joining the team. I know you can't really answer this per se because everything's changing, but do you get the sense that the Pacers might look to move some pieces or trade that 13th pick in an attempt to get more experience, or do you think they're happy with where they're at and they're looking to add a younger piece?
Well, that's a great point, Dustin. I'll take you back a day, and I saw this on social media yesterday, and to me, this says a lot. A number of the Pacers are out in California working out together. In fact, 4 of the 5 starters, the only player that's a starter that's not there, it's because he's back home in Lithuania, is Domantas Sabonis. But Miles Turner, T.J. Warren, Karis LeVert, Malcolm Brogdon, Gogo Batadze, I think 3 or 4, Keelan Martin. They're out in California going through a little Pacers mini camp. That tells me that there is some leadership going on when you take it upon yourself to go out there. Now, I think some Pacer staff members have gone out there to help coordinate, but this was all done by the players. And I don't know who it is. It might be Brogdon, it might be Warren, but that shows some leadership. And that's where I think also the impact of Rick Carlisle. I think what the players have said is they are welcoming a coach of the ilk of Rick Carlisle to come help them take them to another level. And it's almost as if, hey, it's time for us, to put our 2 cents in. So I really found that, very comforting yesterday to see all of those guys out on their own, out working out together. I think that's a pretty good statement by these guys.
Absolutely. I mean, especially coming off of this second season, it seems like 2 seasons back to back where you really didn't have much time off to go do that and dedicate that yourself to that. That does say a lot to me, especially when you're halfway across the country on top of that. But to come together as a group, you got guys that like in the NFL where you can barely get guys to come to camps. So to go on your own and do that, it does say an absolute a ton. And you mentioned the fact of Rick Carlisle. Yeah, he seems to be a stabilizing force on this. So it is a great point. What do they do with this 13th pick? Where do they pick another piece to add to that, or do they trade? There's been rumors that they have turned down a trade already for that. So we'll find out tonight.
Yeah, no question. And Jim, I think what's been interesting, I was at that workout last week, and just for you guys, the IU connection with the Pacers. Pat Knight was in town. He lives in Las Vegas, the former IU player and son of Coach Bob Knight. He's a scout for the Pacers. He is out west, does a lot of the professional scouting. So he'll also be out in Vegas for Summer League next week, because not only do you watch your team, but you watch all of the other teams to see, what players you might like that you might be considering in free agency or that. And then Ryan Carr is the vice president for player development and scouting, a former manager at Indiana. He heads up, what's happening with the Pacers as far as the draft is concerned. There's no question that Kevin Pritchard and Ched Buchanan and that front office staff will make the ultimate decision. But Ryan Carr and his scouts, Pat Knight, they all have input into what the Pacers are hoping to do tonight. And again, they have 3 picks. They have the 13th pick, and then they have 2 picks in the second round, number 56 and 60. And last year, 26 of the 30 second-round picks in the NBA all played at least a game in the NBA last year. So it does tell you that you can make that selection in the second round and have them become something. I mean, look at Malcolm Brogdon. He was the rookie of the year. He was the 36th pick. I mean, we can go on and on and on about how many second-round picks have become pretty good NBA players.
Is Calbert Chaney still on the staff there, right?
Yeah, and that's the other name that I forgot. Calvert is going to stay on in player development. He was with the Pacers last year in his first season, and he's somebody that the Pacers really want to hold on to, and he'll continue to be a part of Rick Carlisle's staff.
And Chris, I want to shift gears just a little bit here because it's an unfortunate part of Pacers history, but we saw on Twitter and other social media outlets that 15, 16 years later, there's going to be a documentary on the Malice in the Palace, and it looks like Jermaine O'Neal was the guy behind that. And we've seen, Steven Jackson, Ron Artest, some of those guys, Reggie Miller, have talked about it, not in great detail. Obviously, if I remember correctly, that happened before your time, but I'm sure you still work with and have worked with people that experienced that and went through that, not just that night, but through that season. What have you learned or what have you been told about what happened that night and the experiences of some of your colleagues?
Well, it was a very difficult time. There's no question. I was just a couple of months in my first year as the sports director at Channel 59, Fox 59. So that became, a huge story that we had to cover, not just, in the month of, November, but really all throughout the year. I think it was a very difficult time because it really, unfortunately, set the franchise back, with the suspensions and just the black eye for the franchise. So it took a while to recover. There's no question. I became the play-by-play voice 2 years later. And, if you think about it, the Pacers were still in recovery mode. And so it was a very difficult time. It was unfortunate. You always hate to see something like that happen. And it took a while. And that's why, for me, 2011 and 12 and 13 and 14 were so gratifying because, the Pacers were able to get back to the top of the NBA. They were in the Final Four 2 consecutive years in 13 and 14. So, when you talk to people, a lot of people just, sort of, they'll reference it, but they go, hey, that's part of the past, and I only want to look at the future. So it was definitely a difficult time for the franchise, and it will be something. I know Netflix has it, and will it be something I want to revisit? I don't know. I don't know if it's something that I'll want to watch or just sort of spin past it, if you will.
Well, and one of the things it kind of ties in one of everybody's least favorite and most unfortunate memories. If a few days later, I'll never forget this because it's always tied to one of my favorite Pacers moments. And the Pacers had only 6 players available for that next game. I don't know how many days later it was, but they had 6 players available. And if I remember correctly, they took Orlando to overtime. They lost the game, but it was very close. And that's one of the reasons why you look back at that to me and you say, this was a team that was as ugly as that was. They were so together. They were so good. They were so deep. I still contend that if that doesn't happen, they would have won a championship and Reggie Miller would have walked out in the sunset, kind of like Peyton Manning did in Denver. But remembering how hard they played and just seeing the fans at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, Conseco Fieldhouse at the time, standing up, giving them a standing ovation is just something that will forever be ingrained in my mind.
Oh, no question. I was doing a live shot that night outside of then Conseco Fieldhouse. And Eddie Gill references that about, how hard and how many minutes they had to play in that game. Because you're right, they were totally undermanned. And if you do think about it, to get to the playoffs that year with all the things that they went through, the multiple suspensions, Reggie was hurt, You lost Ron Artest for the entire year. I mean, the fact that they were able to be in the top 8 of the Eastern Conference after really being decimated through all those things really is a remarkable story.
Well, I don't want to keep you from getting that coffee, man. You've already had a heck of a workout this morning. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Well, looking forward to it. And next week when we'll talk, we'll know a little bit more about this Pacers roster with draft night tonight. And again, I'm really looking forward to it because we have an invitation party for key season ticket holders and sponsors and suite holders. I mean, these are things we used to do before the pandemic, and we know we're, with even how things are, we know we're not past it, but it is going to be a little bit, more normal to be able to celebrate a draft night. You'd rather not be in the lottery because that means you didn't have a very good year. But every time, think about it, the last couple of years that the Pacers have not been in the lottery, they've been in the lottery, they drafted Paul George and Miles Turner, and those 2 picks turned out pretty good.
Absolutely. Hopefully they can go 3 for 3. Chris, thank you. Appreciate you, man. Chris Denari from Voice of the Pacers joining us here on this Thursday. Go have a great day, sir.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You bet. And let's see. We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We'll be back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for a relax...
Oh, what? Mark Boyle, what did he break some ribs or something?
Yeah, and a couple broken ribs and I think a fractured vertebrae or something.
What happened?
I think he got trampled by, I don't know if it was Artest or Steven Jackson. I don't know, but because they were sitting courtside at the time and he got trampled because when that cup was thrown on Artest, he was on the radio, I believe.
Oh, you're talking about during the Malice in the Palace.
Yes. Yeah. And I think he was frustrated because he went on Twitter and said he didn't get interviewed for his perspective on it. And he suffered, he wrote out what all he suffered. I just don't remember what it was.
Wow. I didn't know that though. That's incredible.
And I think he finished the broadcast. I think he just finished it in severe pain. He said this is from his Twitter. I tried to stop Ron from going into the stands and got steamrolled. Not my best move. 5 fractured vertebrae. I thought that there was some broken ribs too, but maybe not.
Come back.
For a new or a used vehicle, Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington's got you covered. They're Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. For deals like this, how about a new 2020 Honda Civic LX front-wheel drive lease for just $180 a month? Or a new 2021 Honda Accord LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Hope you're having a happy Thursday as we are climbing right through it. Man, it's been a busy day already. Plenty to get to, talk about. Of course, the NBA lottery or draft tonight. We just finished up talking about that with Chris Denari and the Pacers. Which way are they going to go? Palace at the Malice doc coming out. That's going to be interesting. It does kind of suck to relive that stuff. Bad time in the Pacers history for certain.
Yeah. And the thing that makes it worse, in my opinion, is the fact that they were so good. They were on the best record in the NBA, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. They had the team, the offense, they had the defense to win an NBA championship. It was Reggie Miller's last season. I don't think he had announced that at the time, but there's just so many factors. And then Chris hit it dead on. After that, there was like a 4 or 5 year rebuilding process where a lot of those guys got traded or their contracts weren't renewed, whatever the case might have been. And so it was a rough time, but the way that team responded has always stuck out to me, because not only did they get to the playoffs, they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals and had chances to beat the Pistons, but it didn't come to fruition, and that cost them a championship.
Yeah, and not only that, though, it puts you down, and it doesn't just prevent that; it really pushes you backwards. Mm-hmm. And it did. It really did more than stop momentum. I mean, it kind of halted momentum. And just pushed him way down.
Because we've always been accustomed, in my lifetime, the Pacers have always been a playoff franchise. They don't always get to the end, or they've only gotten to the NBA Finals once, but they've been regular contenders in the Eastern Conference Finals. They've always been one of the top teams. Even in a bad year, they get to the playoffs, and to have that string, I don't remember how long it was. I think they got to the playoffs the next year before they had that lull where it was 4 or 5 seasons without a playoff appearance. But to have that lull and to just not have any success, really, the Jim O'Brien era was terrible. But you had to hire somebody that was willing to come in and basically take over a franchise that knew it wasn't going to win. And, so to have Frank Vogel then take over and kind of get it back on track. And I know that it's been down the last couple of years, but it's still been a competitive franchise. They've still gotten into the playoffs under Nate McMillan, under Frank Vogel, and hopefully they're with Rick Carlisle. Hopefully they'll get back to that contender spot where they're frequently contenders in the Eastern Conference and maybe vying for an NBA championship one day.
I know you're hung on Franz Wagner. You want to see him in the fold?
Well, to me, Chris his comment is exactly why they talk about needing athleticism, and this isn't a guy who can do a 360 dunk. This is they need somebody who can defend multiple positions. This is a guy who can drive to the basket or knock down a three. I don't think Franz Wagner is a guy who comes in and gives you 20 minutes a game and is going to hit, be the end all be all. But I do think he's a guy that can develop. I think he's a guy that can defend well. I think he's a guy that he's got good athleticism. He can get to the basket. He can get inside. He can knock down the outside shot. I think he just has so many great elements to his game. But there's a lot of guys like that in this draft. This is probably a little bit biased from me because I follow much more closely than some of these other conferences. So I know a little bit more about what he brings to the game and what he would bring to the Pacers. But I think there's a lot of players I think that the Pacers would be happy with. Chris Duarte is another. He's another good Oregon. So there are a lot of good options. I like Franz Wagner basically because of familiarity. I like what he brings to the floor. I like his athleticism. I like his versatility. But I'm not going to be heartbroken if they go a different direction.
Yeah, earlier we were talking about Mark Boyle, and RBL Sprint said he said 5 broke vertebrae. That's a serious.
I can't even
injury,
imagine.
Man.
I can't imagine. And to finish the broadcast, I can't imagine being in that kind of pain. I stub my toe, and it's a bad rest of the day.
Tim wants to see Eric Gordon in. Of course, a lot of people like to see that, but that doesn't do the Pacers any good as far as the future. So it would be nice if he could be added to the team as a complimentary piece, some form, but that's hard to do sometimes at the end of a career, which he's probably getting towards closer to, but not there and yet. I mean, he's probably got 3 more years. You think?
I mean, you never know. I don't know.
I mean, he scored 50 points last year in a game.
He did. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but every offseason there's an Eric Gordon rumor. Everybody wants Eric Gordon to come back. It was the same with Zach Randolph when he was at Memphis. Anytime he was a free agent, they wanted him to come back. I don't get caught up in he's from Indiana. He went to Indiana. He needs to go and play for the Pacers. That you just saw Victor Oladipo do that, and he left the Pacers in the dirt. So I'm tired of talking about the Eric Gordon stuff because it never happens, and I doubt it ever happens. Maybe to come home and say, I'm going to finish my last year or 2 years with the Pacers just because maybe, but I don't know that the Pacers have ever shown any true interest in him. And if they have, clearly they weren't willing to offer him the kind of money he wanted. So how serious are you about getting him?
Back to conference realignment. All right, we've talked about USC, UCLA, some craziness. What about go the other direction? East. What any Eastern teams that would be appealing for addition to the Big Ten? And to me, you've got to be a school that can offer more than just a sport. You can't. That's why Kansas is not an option. Other than basketball, what in the hell does Kansas bring? Zip. Not a thing. So I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, Notre Dame is the option, is without question. They're the most natural fit. They're the best fit. They would benefit. Both would benefit. And then it wouldn't matter who the other team you added. You could almost add a Pitt or Iowa State. It doesn't really matter at that point because Notre Dame will make up for anything. But I think it would benefit Notre Dame as well. They're hung on this independent thing for football. And, it's worked for them so far, so you can't fault them. And if they go to 12 teams, they really don't need it because they're treated differently. But at some point, are they going to stop being treated differently?
I listened to the show earlier this week when you had Mike DeCourcy on, and that was a great point he brought up. If the playoff is 12, there's no incentive for them to join a conference at any point, because then as long as they're ranked in the top, whatever it would be, 12 or however the math works out on that, they're going to get into the playoffs. They're not ever going to get a bye, but there's no incentive then to join a conference and try to win a conference unless it's financially beneficial. But I don't know what their contract deals are. I don't know what Notre Dame's deal is with NBC, but it must be pretty lucrative if they're refusing to join a conference.
About $15 million a year is what they make off of that.
So, I have no idea, but they get to do what they want. They get to schedule the games that they want. They have the ability to be more flexible. I wonder if you get to a point where this is going to sound crazy, but I almost wonder if you get to a point where if you have 16, 18 teams in a league, are you just going to play league games at that point? Are you going to play any non-conference games? And so then is that going to kind of force Notre Dame's hand to join a conference, or otherwise you're not going to get any games? That sounds crazy, but I thought Texas and Oklahoma joining the USC or joining the SEC, if you would have told me that a week ago or 2 weeks ago, you were crazy. So you never know what could happen. As far as the ACC, the only problem with that is their whatever it is, their grant of rights is through like 2035. So trying to get Navi's contract agreements would be an absolute nightmare. And I don't know if there's an ACC team that would do much for the Big Ten. Maybe North Carolina, if you could get North Carolina, Virginia Tech. I don't know what those programs offer in terms of brand notoriety that you wouldn't get from a USC or an UCLA or even an Oregon at this point. So you could go the other direction, but I think it's too messy with the contractual obligations they have. because the ACC covered its tracks when Maryland left the ACC for the Big Ten, and they extended that that grant of rights, I think, through 2035. So unless you're able to rework those contracts, it's going to be tough to poach teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they were smart in doing that. But so now where do we go from here? The SEC has become a super conference, at least when it comes to football. Not necessarily in basketball. There's still Texas can be, Oklahoma definitely can be. Two great basketball additions. That's the one thing about those schools. They're great additions in multiple sports, especially Texas. But the two money sports, that's the thing that you look at the Big Ten now. Where can they get that? Where can they get that draw that it draws both ways? Because while football drives a train, basketball has become a gigantic moneymaker as well. So you want to get someone who has things going well on both sides of that. And that's hard to do, especially in this area.
I'll give you an example of two teams that I think would fly under the radar, but I think that they would. I don't know what it's reported that the Big Ten wants the AAU to add these schools. But I think that two schools that might do something for the Big Ten would be Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, because those aren't huge markets. Those are the secondary program and really the third program if you're talking about Texas Tech. But it's not a big market, but that also gives you access. That gives you television and into the state of Texas, and that's a big deal. That gives you more recruiting in Texas. That expands your brand. It's not ideal, but it's better than what Kansas is going to bring you. It's better than what it's going to bring you, in my opinion. Those are two schools that are typically, they're not great, but typically they're solid. They would pose more of a threat in the Big Ten on the football side than definitely Kansas. Oklahoma State's typically ranked in the top 25. Texas Tech has some on and off years. So I think that those are two potential candidates if they continue to poach and disband the Big 12. But I mean, who knows what's going to happen? The one thing I'll say about this is there seems to be a lot of panic about the Big Ten, but you have to remember the Big Ten still leads the country in attendance. It still leads the country in terms of financial revenue from the television partners. It still leads the country in terms of the games watched, viewership. Usually it has 3 of the top 5 most viewed games in college football.
That's not going to be the case after Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC. There's no way. Texas alone has the largest collegiate athletics budget in all of collegiate sports. So that's going to change.
But
they're also going to have
16
teams, don't they? Or
they're going to have 16 teams, right? But that's not going to deter away from Ohio State. What games outside of maybe? I mean, we're talking about Oklahoma and Alabama. Like Texas had the most money in the Big 12, and they sucked. They've not been good for a while. I mean, they've been okay, but they haven't been great. So the Big Ten has continued to beat the Big 12 and the SEC in terms of viewership, in terms of attendance, in terms of television revenue. Now, obviously, the contracts are going to be re-upped, but you still have Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska. Those are big brands. If you were,
I get that, but now you're adding big brands to big brands over here in the SEC now, and so that's the difference. Earlier we were just comparing apples to apples, and now we're not. You've added things to that cart over there, and it's going to make it different. It's going to make it more attractive games, bigger games, and Texas Tech. There's no TV there, so that's no.
And I agree with what you're saying, but to my point is, who are you going to add that's going to compete with Texas and Oklahoma?
No one. That's the problem.
That's my point. So everybody's talking about, and I think the Big Ten will probably expand, but everybody's talking about the Big Ten having to expand. I don't think they have to. They still have huge brands. You're not going to compete with a Texas and an Oklahoma. So, I mean, you're going to go down if you add Kansas. It's probably going to go up during basketball season, but in football season, nobody's going to want to watch Kansas play Rutgers. I watched that game 2 or 3 years ago. It was god-awful. So I don't know who you're going to be able to add that's going to spike the interest and say, oh, you know what? Now that Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, now that North Carolina and Virginia, now that USC and UCLA, now I'm going to watch Big Ten football. I think USC and UCLA are the best two options if you had options, but I don't think whoever the Big Ten adds, I don't think it changes that much.
Well, it's not going to change a ton, and the addition would only be to gain. And what are you gaining? TV markets. Is that the only thing that you're looking to gain is TV markets? So again, that limits you. Where Houston, there's so many facets of this. Like I said, you mentioned the AAU. Every team in the Big Ten is a member of the AAU except for Nebraska, which was a member of it. Google that stuff if you're not aware of it. It's all kinds of other stuff. But here's the thing. When the SEC renegotiates their TV, they're going to surpass the Big Ten in miles. They're going to generate way more revenue. When you add Texas and Oklahoma, but Texas specifically, that is going to increase the TV revenue. That's going to increase the TV power of the SEC, their asking power of ESPN. And it's going to give ESPN more control over college football. You look right now, you wonder why you don't see Indiana on College Game Day. Well, because they're in the Big Ten, which has their biggest contract with Fox. Fox doesn't do College Game Day. That's the ESPN's deal. That's why you're probably not going to see Indiana on College Game Day unless they end up undefeated coming in against Ohio State when that game rolls around. But even then, man, it may be tough. But we got to take a quick break. We'll talk about it all and much more when we come back here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking
Can you guys hear that?
What is it?
Okay, never mind. You probably can. Sounds like there's a vacuum above me.
Hey, it's Jim. I just got like 1 minute real quick. Earlier's fine, like 11:30. Okay, that works. And do you happen to have you would happen to have like a 3-foot hole that would go for the toilet?
Man, the day's gone by fast.
It has, man.
I got up at
Looking
4:30
forward to
this
start
morning.
that podcast in a couple of weeks.
Yep. Of course, there's kind of a wrench thrown into your plans now.
Do what?
There's kind of a wrench thrown into your plans now.
Oh, with you?
No. Oh, never mind. We won't. Never mind.
Why? What's wrong?
Nothing.
What plans?
Is it secret?
It's like Six. Secrets? No, that's not Six. That's Queen, isn't it? Secret.
Is it something we can talk about after we're off the air?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Is it photo day for Indiana football?
All right. Bring us back.
Or on the golf course, Sam's Restaurants has multiple locations and something for everyone. Sam's Restaurant in Fishers has homemade coffee cakes and much more. Sam's Place in Broad Ripple has wings, tender steaks, and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat. Coming to you here on this Thursday. Let's a little note from Indiana soccer is Indiana men's soccer is saddened by the death of three-time All-American Armando Betancourt. Played 1979 and 1981. Passed away on Wednesday in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. He was 63. Lost an IU legend today, had men's soccer coach Todd Yeagley said. Armando was a wonderful player with attacking gifts very few players possess. He helped IU soccer become a national power and then went on to represent Honduras in the 1982 World Cup. He is one of the all-time greats to wear the IU jersey and a legendary player for Honduras. Sad to see his passing. Wanted to mention that. Soccer coming up, something we haven't talked about. Last year had the spring season, which was much more fun. I'll be honest with you. Like to see the split season. They've talked about it. I think they should do it. It would be better for the sport, better for the fans, better for the players, better for everyone. I think. My personal opinion. Indiana has got a ton of players on award list. Charles Campbell, now their kicker, added to the Lou Groza list. And then this morning, Michael Ziemba is now on the Werfel list. That gives what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 preseason awards watch list. 15.
Pretty good.
We're not talking about Ohio State here. 15. And I'm not talking about some Boy Scout award. Dodd Trophy, Maxwell, Bednarik, Davey O'Brien, Doak Walker, Blitnikoff, the John Mackey, the Jim Thorpe, the Butkus, the Outland, Lou Groza, and the Werfel Trophy. Those are all major trophies, other than the Heisman Trophy, which is not listed here.
Right.
But I would be, if Penix is healthy, he's going to be on that. There has never been a time ever that I can recall that Indiana had this going, other than like an Anthony Thompson and somebody when you get on a couple lists. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different guys. 8 different players. Okay. How many teams in the United States right now have 8? Well, it includes Coach Allen, I think, maybe, but has 8 or 9 different people on these major watch lists. I guarantee you, even though those watch lists are big, it's not a big list. Maybe
I wouldn't
10?
think so. I don't know. That's a great question to ask, but it's usually the teams at the top. And so clearly they think that Indiana is going to be at the top. I mean, a lot of these watch lists thinks Indiana is going to be at the top, and these players who performed well a season ago or for the past 2 years are going to do well again this year. So it's a great honor. We talk about him, Tom Allen, building depth in Bloomington, and clearly he's done that. He's got talent all over the field, and that's reflective on what you see in these watch lists.
Well, yeah, because if you go down through it, you've got your coaches on a list, your quarterback and leading receivers on a list, your 2 top defensive players are on a list, your top running back is on a list, your top tight end is on the list, another Your kicker is on the list. Another defensive player is on a list. Balance and high play. That there are very few teams that offer them, and for Indiana to raise Tom Allen to raise their level of play, that's one thing. This is different. This is a level of respect. He's getting respect. Indiana has never gotten respect, no matter what they've done. They're getting respect now. They are a respected program, which means they're going to be a targeted program.
Yeah, and that's one of the big questions we've talked about multiple times. It's how is Indiana going to handle going from the hunter to the hunted, because they're going to have a target on their back. You talk about Indiana beating some of these programs. Penn State, the way they beat them in that fashion, they clobbered Michigan at home. Some of these teams are going to be out for blood. A lot of these teams are going to want revenge. So how does Indiana handle that? And how do they handle that in front of a capacity crowd? Because a lot of these games, they have to go to Happy Valley. They have to go to Michigan. They have to go to Iowa to open the season. How are you going to handle that? Playing really good competition, playing 9 conference games. You have a tough game in your non-conference schedule against Cincinnati. How are you going to – and then Western Kentucky, sometimes they're one of the better teams in the group of 5. Sometimes they're at the bottom. But they have a tough non-conference schedule. They've got a tough conference schedule. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle going from no expectations into being one of the 2 or 3 top challengers to Ohio State in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm looking, as I've said, just looking forward to this Big Ten season. Who's going to reign supreme? It should be Ohio State, but I was watching swimming last night. You were talking about not knowing it was live. I think this was live. The 4x200 women's relay that the Americans finished second in. I don't think that they were supposed to medal in that event. Katie Ledecky, holy cow. She swam the anchor, and I was watching the third leg. I can't remember who that was, but that girl made up some room, kind of caught up. Katie Ledecky got in the water, and it was on. She damn near this close. It was this close to the Chinese for the gold. The touch. And I'm like, wow, that was fun to watch. It was just fun to watch that. I don't know how swimming can be that engaging, but man, it was. I was like, yeah, you're on the edge of your seat. Come on. You're watching. You can see every reach getting closer, but fun watching that stuff. But sports, that's why all of sports, it's great to see this level of competition and this football program. You're talking about all these players. That's what makes everything fun. When you have that level of competition, when you're playing teams like Iowa that close and winning, and when you're playing the Michigan States, the Michigans, the Penn States, the Ohio States, all these teams that you have always been the doormat to, and now no longer are you not only you the doormat, they are projected to be lower than you. Some of them are lower than you. They're chasing you, and it's a different world.
Yeah, it's a fun time to be an Indiana fan because this is really the first time there's excitement about football and basketball and women's basketball and baseball, soccer. The list goes, volleyball. You could go on and on and on about what programs people are excited for when we get underway with the 2021-22 academic and athletic year. But it all starts with football. You've never had this, and that's why it's so interesting to me to see how Indiana handles this pressure, because I don't remember a time they've ever had these kind of expectations. There's an expectation that they go to Kinnick Stadium and win. There's an expectation that they continue to stay in the top 2 or 3 in the Big Ten East, not just this year, but for the long haul. And so that's what makes this year really fun. I think we're going to find out a lot about Indiana. We're going to find out a lot about Tom Allen, and to see whether they can sustain this success. 8-5, they go 6-2 a season ago. There's what fans can't do is sit there and say, well, if Indiana doesn't get to 10 wins, it's a bad year. It's nice to have that expectation to get to 10 wins, but if you would have said 2 decades ago that at this point Indiana's going to go 8-5, 6 6-2 and finish with let's say 8-9 wins, you take that every time. It's about building that sustainability and building that consistency. And if you can do it 3 years in a row, we've already seen the recruiting has improved. It's going to get even better.
Yeah, and that's the thing. What is success for the normal fan this year? The casual fan. What is success to them? Enough that they come back, because the fans have to come and they have to come back. They have to, the ones that haven't bought the tickets, buy the tickets, stay in the stands, stay in the games, support the game through, because it's going to be probably as important as ever this year with these teams, this schedule. It's a great schedule.
Let's say here's a question that I kind of have batted around. What do you think is better for Indiana? Let's say your options are to go 9-3, but you lose to Ohio State, you lose to Penn State, and let's say you lose to Iowa, or to go 7-5 and maybe you beat Ohio State. What do you think is the better option there? It's tough because I think that's something that I think Indiana faces, because I don't.
If you've lost 5 times though, that a win over Ohio State, something's going to have to. It will lose a lot of luster with 5 losses. That would take a lot of luster off of it for me, because I mean, like, wow, you've lost to some teams you absolutely should not have lost to, at least 2.
Correct.
And that means you lost 3 times to teams that you were every bit as good as and didn't get it done. Now, some of those could be on the road at Iowa, at Penn State. Those are going to be very, very tough, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think a loss to Ohio State is more. You can explain it away, but the kind of momentum that it would create to win that game. Even if you won 7, let's say you won 7 games and then you win your bowl game, you finish 8-5. I think that generates a lot of momentum as well. I don't know that there's a bad option. I would just be interested to know, from an Indiana fan's perspective, would you rather go 9-3 but you still can't beat Ohio State, or would you rather finally beat Ohio State and win a bowl game but you finish maybe 7-5 or 8-5 at that 8-5 or 7-6 or whatever the case might be?
Yeah, a 5-loss season just to me is a step back. I don't care who you beat. If you're losing that many games, again, you're just losing. That means you've not lost 1. You've lost 2 games that you absolutely shouldn't have lost, and that is just a step back. And that's just me. That's just my thinking. That's just too much loss for me. That's too much regression. If you're going to have to beat Ohio State and be 9-3 in my mind for that Ohio State win to mean as much as it should mean. I think that's going to be the case nationally, perception wise. You can't, beating at Ohio State but losing 5 other times. I promise you, again, that means 2 losses to teams you shouldn't have lost to, and that's going to stick out. Indiana lost to Maryland, or Indiana, whoever they were upset by. That means they were upset by 2 teams, and that's going to stick out in people. Same old Indiana. They'll forget about that Ohio State win quickly with those losses. But I'm a person that the losses hurt way more than the wins feel good to me. That's just how it's always been, unfortunately, for me.
Well, I know we're running out of time, but let's take a quick big picture view here, and from the Goodyear blimp above all of this, above Memorial
Tony
Stadium.
must be 9-3.
The fact that we're debating whether it would be better for Indiana to go 7-5 or 9-3 is quite the conversation, because it wasn't that long ago people were just talking, just get to 6 wins and go to a bowl game. Just get to 6 wins and go to a bowl game. It's almost a foregone conclusion that they're going to go to a bowl game. And we're talking about maybe beating Ohio State, maybe finishing with 7 wins, maybe pushing 10 wins if they can get a bowl game, win their bowl game. I mean, that alone, it might be frustrating to finish 7-5, but the fact that we're having that conversation says a lot about how much this program has grown in Tom Allen's short time.
The fact that we're having a conversation about Indiana football preseason,
that's
period.
True too.
And expectations, period, shows that. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. And it's great. And I want to keep it up. I want it to stay that way. But yeah, the expectations with this recruiting continues. The expectations has to grow. Everything has to continue to grow. And that's another dangerous thing. You're new. When you're new and you're growing, man, there's going to be some ups and downs. And those downs are hard to take when the growing is new, because you just like, oh, wow, this is great. And then the first setback, it's like, what? But
I think real quick, I think that the positive you have is that when you look at Tom Allen's recruiting, those kids are buying into his culture. They're buying into him. They're not buying into the wins. Wins and losses play a big role in it, but they're not gonna decommit after a 7-5 season. They're bought into him. They're bought into that culture. They're bought into that staff.
Absolutely. Been another fun day, man. I cannot thank Dustin enough, of course, but Chris Denari and Matt Taylor coming to us live from Westfield up there at the Colts camp. Looking forward to doing this again tomorrow. Alec Lasley will be with us from thehoosier.com. We'll get you caught up on basketball recruiting, what's going on there, who's doing what. We're getting closer and closer to that aspect of the season shutting down. The live period's over. Bahamas trip 2 weeks away, if that. But that's go out and you got the Olympics going on today. We're looking forward to it. We'll see what Lily King and Annie Lazar can do in their finals when those come. When are those?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, I don't know when that is, but looking forward to that. But I can't thank you guys enough. Without you, we've got nothing to do. Of course, John, the producer, as well. But we'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. And until then, we look forward to it. If you're listening on radio, go down, stay on board. And until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.